Welcome back to Recalibrate Agency. I'm your host, Danielle and I'm pleased today to have Abby Gallo. She is the founder and CEO of Terrain Bookkeeping. And today we are talking about annual budgets. So Abby, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you've come from, and where you're going?
Well, thanks for having me, Danielle. My name's Abby Gallo. I'm the founder and CEO of Terrain Bookkeeping. And I started out about 15 years ago working at a PR agency. And through a series of career changes, discovered bookkeeping when I was running a small organization. And I really just fell in love with it, sort of the simplicity of it, the way it's concrete, it all ties out. It's sort of cathartic in a way. Some people find it disturbing that I love it, but I do. And so I received thorough training in it, became a QuickBooks Pro advisor, and then about 4.5 years ago, started Terrain Bookkeeping. And we're a bookkeeping firm. We work with servicing marketing creative agencies, and we really help them gain financial clarity around their business finances, helping them increase their profits, helping them grow their business, and really gaining a grasp on the day-to-day finances.
I love that you came from a PR background, got into the numbers side of things, and now are serving creatives, because there's really kind of two buckets in general of agency owner. You have the creative that accidentally became an owner, and they really, by and large, struggle with financials and the numbers side of it. This is all general statements, of course. And then you have the entrepreneurial minded owners that went into starting the business because they knew they were going to grow it and then maybe sell it. And they had that mindset already in place. So what have you seen, and what do you disagree with in the realm of marketing agencies that really impacts how they're able to understand their financials?
One thing that I've seen people kind of debate, or it seems like a hot topic, is time tracking. And I know no one likes to do it. Let's put it that way. It's not fun for anyone, right? But I think, sometimes there's the sense of, well, I have my own agency. I want to run it the way I want to, and I don't feel like doing it. And I just caution agency owners there, because there's so much information that you can get from tracking your time. And frankly, we can't help clients calculate their true profitability until they're tracking their time, right? We work with a lot of clients on figuring out the profitability of their offers or their client retainers, and we just can't do that unless we know how much time they're spending on them. And I know it's human nature. We can either overestimate or underestimate how much time we're really spending on those things. So the proof is in the pudding, right? I think actually doing the time tracking is the way to go. So that's what we advise all of our clients to do if they're really looking to get accurate profitability information.
Absolutely, because otherwise you're just flying by the seat of your pants and shooting in the dark. So when you're approaching your annual budget, would you say that time tracking is one of the core components that you need to have in place to make an accurate budget?
I think in order to make sure that you're profitable, you do need to have time tracking in place. But you can create a simplified budget without time tracking in place. One of the things that we help clients do is to set up an annual budget. And what we do is we take last year's data, last year's information on what their sales were, what their expenses were, basically pulling their P&L, their profit and loss statement, from the prior year or the past 12 months. It depends on the timing of when we're creating it, and work with them to increase it a little bit, usually like 10 to 20%, just to account for increasing costs. And then we take a look at it to see, what was different about last year and what will be different about this year. Do you have new clients that are in the pipeline that are coming through? Have you hired a new salesperson and you need to account for them and expenses, and also what they're projected to bring in for you? Do you have something you're investing in? All of these different components, you tweak the different income or expense accounts to say, it's going to be $1,000 more this year or whatever it is. So there's a way to do it, with keeping it pretty simple. And I think that's key, that it's better to do it at least in a simplified version than to not do it at all.
Absolutely. And sometimes it can be a struggle when you're looking at your budget and trying to forecast and fill in all of those pieces for your budget to know like what really is going to happen next year. So what are some of the pieces of advice that you'll give to help prevent wishful thinking, but also to help manage expectations in other ways?
Yeah, well, one of the things we say is that you can create multiple budget scenarios. So we will work with our clients to kind of create a baseline budget. It's more conservative. It's closer to what it was last year and what feel confident about bringing in. And then more of an aspirational budget or a reach budget where um, you know, you hope to bring in more clients and you want to bring on another team member. These are all things that can be part of that budget. But the budget is really great. It's never going to be perfect, right? You're never going to be accurate, right? You're always going to be over or under the budget a little bit because you don't have a crystal ball to predict the future. But you can take your information from years past and what you know about your revenue growth and all of that, and use that to inform it's almost like your educated guess, right? On what the budget will be for the coming year.
And that's an important distinction that your annual budget is not designed to be a super sturdy, rigid framework for how you spend your money and where your income is coming from, because you can't control all of those components, but you can account for them, you can plan for them, you can set those reach goals. How do you recommend maybe tracking against those goals over time throughout the year? Do you have a process that you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's crucial to track against them. We recommend on a monthly basis, but if you're unable to do that, at least on a quarterly basis. And doing that allows you to kind of check in on a regular basis and see how things are going, how you're tracking against your goals before it's too late, right? If you wait till the end of the year, then it's too late to make any changes. But once you're tracking against it, there's capabilities within QuickBooks, or you can even do it manually in Excel to say, your budget versus actual. So you have your column of this is what you budgeted for the year. And some people who can get more complicated and want to do it, by month, you can do that too, to say, this is what I had hoped to spend this month, and this is what we actually spent. So you have your budget and then your actuals, and you can compare the two and see how you did, what the difference is between the two. And really tracking against those allows you to make changes. Maybe you had assumptions that were flawed. Maybe you thought you were going to increase your sales, but you didn't. Or maybe your operations aren't as efficient as you thought they would be. Maybe there's something broken there, that you can take a look at and tweak before it's too late. Or maybe there's just something going on in the market or, in the world that has flipped things on a head, and has impacted your business. And so you can either adjust your operations, you can sort of make those internal changes to correct course, or you can change your expectations. You can say, okay, well, this is the reality of our new situation, and this is how we're going to tweak it going forward. So
Is it okay to tweak your budget throughout the year?
absolutely, I think so. Especially if you're your small business owner. I think those with investors and things like that may be a bit more complicated, but yes, we do make updates to our clients' budgets based on changes that we know will happen.
Mhm. And along that same train of thought, should a budget year over year look the same? Should they be different? Does it depend? What's your perspective?
I tend to think they're different every year. And part of that is, that 10 to 20% of increasing costs that we like to build in. So looking at the prior year, you make those modifications to increase it a little bit. Um, and then I think, all businesses tend to change. There's staffing changes, there's changes in the marketplace. Most business owners hope to grow, and so they set their sights on greater revenue, and with that comes sometimes greater expenses, or usually. And so there are almost always tweaks to the budget from the prior year, but you can use the previous year to create sort of that baseline of expectation, and then tweak it from there.
Mhm. Specifically in scenarios where maybe market dynamics are creating downward pressure on agency revenue streams, how should for let's say for 2024, are there any things that agency owners should really be looking at when they go into their 2024 budget planning period?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to take a look at, what you have going on in your pipeline, and what you have, coming in, and see if you can make changes to your expenses to account for, potentially decreased sales. If there are any areas that you can cut to really pare back. People don't like to use the B word, because budget is often associated with kind of keeping your expenses in line, but it's also a great tool to make sure, especially if you have departments or people in charge of different areas of the business, that you have sort of parameters for them to spend within. So it's just an important tool. Again, it doesn't have to be adhered to a T. There are exceptions, there are things that change, but I think it's good to sort of set those expectations from the start.
For sure. And training some mindsets into your team members too about how to use the agency resources effectively is another important component that you should be
Mm,
thinking about as you're doing your budget planning, because you do have people that they might need certain tools, or they might come to you and say they need certain tools, but then they aren't actually utilizing it the way that they should be to justify the cost. So having some sort of feedback loop in place to assess what softwares do you actually need, what expenses are actually mission critical to your business, and bringing your team members into that system as well, I think is
mm.
important. Abby, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think having your team members involved in the budget creation process is crucial. I think, if they're going to be held accountable to it in one way or another, that having their input is going to be so important, especially because they have sort of the boots on the ground of, what's happening in the day to day, and what kind of changes will be coming down the pipeline, or what kind of software may help their team, or maybe isn't useful anymore. And that's one of the things we always go, software is one of those things that all clients are, can we check this on a regular basis? Because we always do an audit with them to make sure, are you still using this? Is this still, bringing you your ROI? So yes, that having department team members involved in budgeting is crucial, at least with their aspect of it. And then that can kind of all roll up into the overall agency budget.
Absolutely. Another common question that I hear from agency owners is, how much should I be spending marketing my own agency? What's your
Mm,
general rule of thumb?
that's a great question. I know that it tends to be that that marketing agencies are they're the last ones to market themselves, right? Or that's the one that doesn't get the most attention, right? Even those who want to treat themselves as a client. Um, so I think it just depends. You just have to look at your goals, and you know what your sales goals are. We don't have a specific target, for any one agency, but I think it's a case by case basis, and we take a look at what they hope to bring in sales, and and go from there.
Yeah, for sure. And um, it really comes down to, like you're saying, are you looking to, 10x your agency? Are you looking to maintain your agency? Are you looking to just keep pace with inflation and then maybe a little bit on top? So it really
Hmm.
depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, there's even situations where you're not trying to market your agency because you have plenty and there are not growth goals. Like that does happen. So it, take a look at where you're looking to go for sure, and look at some of the other ways that you can be investing in your agency beyond monetary investment. Because
Mm.
if you take the same perspective with your employees' time and their contributions to your own business development efforts, you can multiply your reach, your client engagement, your sales pipeline through using internal resources and not just paying out for advertising and all of these things that may or may not actually work for your agency. So those are some other things to consider. Um, I'm curious, Abby, to what degree should the operational team versus the business development team, which are usually separate at most agencies that are above 10 employees or so, how involved should they be in the annual planning?
I think they should be absolutely involved. I think, business development needs to have a seat at the table when you're talking about, what you expect to bring in for sales, because they're the ones who know, and they're the ones who are going to be responsible for bringing that in. So having them at least involved in the revenue part of the budget is really important. And then sort of conversely, operations side of things, in terms of what expenses you'll be incurring for that year, they're absolutely going to be important to setting those goals and parameters for their team.
Mhm. Absolutely. What do you think about transparent financial sharing among agencies? Another hot
Among agencies.
topic. Well, among
Among
the
agencies
like
or
with the
internally?
internally, yeah, at the agency.
That's a great question, and I think it's down to personal preference of the agency owner. I do think that having transparency, for team members can provide um, a sense of trust, a sense of shared goals. But I know that there are some, especially smaller agency owners who would rather keep that closer to the chest. So or to the vest. And so I'm not sure. I think it's a matter of personal preference, but I think that there is value to sharing and being transparent so that your team members can really be involved and have skin in the game.
Mhm. Having skin in the game really matters. And and maybe it's kind of the best of both worlds. Maybe you share just very select figures and keep the rest behind the scenes or with a core leadership team and not just the general team, but having just a little glimpse into where things are going, because your people are your product for by and large.
Hmm.
I mean, some agencies do have productized actual like product offerings, but the services that your people are providing are the bread and butter of your agency. And so them knowing what their contributions, what their talents, what their efforts are yielding is, I think, really important for their own understanding of their contributions, their value in your organization, and their place on your team, and what that's going to look like in the future too. I think that's really important. Um, well, we're getting close to time here, Abby. I'm curious, what's something that you and your team have recently launched or been working on pulling together that you're really proud of?
Sure. So we recently launched our CFO intensives, and so these are, it's almost like a VIP day if you're familiar with those. Although we don't do a whole day because that would be a lot for someone to sit through financials. But what we do is we'll work with our clients to assess the profitability of a certain sampling of their packages and of their client retainers, depending on how they're structured. and work with them to create an annual budget. So this is kind of designed for those agencies that are a little bit smaller who may not be ready to bring someone on in the CFO capacity on a regular basis, but are looking for some guidance on how do I set up my budget? How much should I be paying myself? Am I making any money in this package that I'm offering? And should I offer more of it, or is this one better? So we kind of, we have them fill out a questionnaire and ask them to provide us with some information in advance. And then from there, we sit down with them and kind of plug it all in together and work through it and give them that information that they're looking for to then really make those changes. Maybe they need to raise their prices or focus on one particular offer over another. And that really gives them that insight that then they can take, and implement change for the rest of the year. So that's been really helpful. We're really excited to roll more of that out to more of our existing clients.
That's wonderful and super helpful to get clarity in a really concise way so that they can keep moving forward, keep building their momentum, and keep on keeping on. So, Abby, I want to thank you so much for coming on today, for sharing your thoughts behind annual budget planning and all of that. Is there anything else you would like to share today?
No, I think really the big message I always hammer home is you can't manage what you don't measure. So I think for any agency owner that would prefer to keep their head in the sand and not look at their financials, I totally understand. But it's crucial to really know your numbers in order to be able to improve them and to know your numbers and grow. So that would be probably my biggest message.
Great advice, Abby. Thank you so much. And really to give maybe 3 or 4 takeaways from today's episode. First of all, take a look at your profit and loss and use that as your starting point is what Abby recommends. And when you're doing your budget and planning for next year, just remember it doesn't have to be set in stone. You can make adjustments over time. What you're doing is setting some guardrails, a little bit of a framework for yourself to be shooting for operationally and from a business development perspective. And on that front, make sure that you're involving the key stakeholders in your agency that know where the money's coming from and where the money's going, and keep tabs on that regularly. Create those positive loops where you're getting feedback from them, where you can document and make adjustments based off of their feedback, what you're seeing in the marketplace as well. And finally, make sure that you don't overcomplicate it. It's very easy to just get into the weeds way too much on this. But remember, you're looking at it from a high level when you're doing your budget, and you can't account for everything, but you can at least set a positive direction for your agency. That's all for today on Recalibrate Agency. I'm your host, Danielle Photo. Cheers until next time.